welcome to the podcast. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about yourself, both personally and professionally?
Sure. So my name's MK, which is short for Mary Catherine. I was born and raised in Huntsville, Alabama. I went to Auburn University and got my degree in supply chain. I graduated in 2017. And then you kind of move where the job is. So I moved up to Massachusetts, didn't know anybody here, didn't really know what I was looking for, applied to jobs for like 6 months, and then finally got a job at TJX, which is the parent company
Right.
to
Yeah.
Marshall Home Goods. It was a very interesting experience. I think really good to start in a bigger company because it kind of tells you what right looks like from like a professional standpoint. So I was there for 2.5 or 3 years. Was on several different teams. Started on the EDI team, developing some reporting in Excel and using Cognos and just generally building my like more technical skills. And then I moved over to business enablement about 10 months after I started, after like this giant reorg. So that was also really interesting, learning how to navigate that and how different buildings, because I moved buildings in that process too, like different buildings operated differently. I think to learn a whole new side of the business, was closer to merchandising and business enablement. So got some pretty good exposure to stuff there. And then after that, I made a pretty big change and went to a very small startup out of Boston called Perch. Perch was born during COVID, so everything was a little weird. Uh, it was called an FBA aggregator. There were a bunch of them that kind of popped out during the COVID times. And so what that means is we essentially bought businesses that sold products on Amazon. A really large number of them are literally like a mom and a dad who've created a product that solve issues. Baby Merlin sleep suits. I don't know if you've heard of
Oh,
those.
yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I've heard it's a lifesaver. I look forward to finding out. That was one of our brands. So things that people actually like knew quite well. So we bought companies, and then the theory was we could grow them larger because we
Mm.
had groups of people with dedicated knowledge in each area. I was one of, I think I was number 38 at the company.
Aw.
And then by the time I left, we had over 200. So it
Wow.
was extremely interesting to have an opportunity to watch something grow from nothing. And that's where I would say a majority of my supply chain experience came from. I mean, we had no tools. We were working in Excel. We were building our own ERP. I made every mistake in the book when it comes to supply chain in that role. And I was lucky enough to like have the opportunity to do that pretty young. So I jumped from that experience into Celonis, which is a SaaS technology. So very, very different going from operational into more of a SaaS type role. But that is in summary, I guess, the more professional side.
All right. Oh, yeah. We don't hear about you personally as well.
Oh, yes. So when I moved to Massachusetts, didn't really know anybody. COVID seemed like a good time to start dating around, so I explored the dating apps. Met my husband on there like a couple weeks after I started using it.
Oh my gosh.
Neither one of us was like really intending to go into a full relationship or anything. We just wanted somebody to spend time with during COVID. And then we started hanging out every weekend. And then he was like, "Hey, you should learn how to ride a motorcycle." And I was like, "You know what? I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want." Sure. Sure, I will. And I bought a motorcycle. It taught me how to ride it in one weekend. I showed up to the, actually showed up to the like how to ride class on a motorcycle because I stayed too late at his house the night before and didn't have time to go home. And then got my license, and we rode every weekend that entire summer. So
Child, I love that
How
story. See,
fun.
Katie, we almost missed it. I was like, no, no, no. There's some personal story there. I knew it.
There
Okay.
is.
yeah,
Good.
then the rest is history. We got engaged, got married, bought a house, and now we're having a baby all within the last like 2 years.
That's so exciting.
Yay. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so you won so many good learning opportunities. I love how you embraced it too. You're like, I made every mistake in the book. But I do think this is how you learn through all of these things. I mean, I know you studied supply chain management, but what prompted you to go and study supply chain management? We always like to know, like, what was that aha or that spark where you either fell in love with supply chain, knew about supply chain? So what maybe inspired you to go to school for this? And was it affirmed when you started your first job?
It is actually so funny. I chose supply chain because my roommate in college was like, "Hey, you should get a degree in supply chain." And I was like, You know what? That's a great idea. I love that idea. And like her sister had gotten a minor in it, and I had gone to Auburn like under psychology, being like an area of interest, but like I picked it because I was interested, not because I actually saw like long-term career prospects with it. And so when she said do supply chain, I mean, first of all, I didn't think twice. It was total blind, like, okay, good idea. And then I started taking the classes, and I was just like very naturally good at it. I don't know how else to describe it. Like everybody has a talent, and sometimes some things make more sense to some people than others. And this was just one of those things where it like clicked immediately. I was like, oh, I completely understand how this seems to work. It's all a big cycle. So you add something on one side, you got to balance it with something on the other side. And so the rest was history. And then I really enjoyed the classes. So it affirmed that it was the right choice to just blindly
Okay.
trust my roommate at the time.
Did your roommate study supply chain?
She's a pharmacist.
She's like, but I know what you should do.
MK, I
Yeah,
love how you just are like, you want to do a motorcycle? Sure, I'll go do a motorcycle. You want to do supply chain? Yeah. I love that.
I just roll with it, you know? I think saying no keeps you from opportunities that maybe you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. I
This
don't
is
think I
true.
ever would have looked at the School of Business and said, yep, supply chain, that's where I should go before her
Hmm.
saying you should go there.
Yeah. Okay, so you're in this new role today, different company, software as a service. How would you describe to someone you've just met, like, what is it that you do day to day? What does that look like and feel like?
So I am what you call a value engineer. Salonis is pretty unique in that we have this value engineering department. And so the people in the value engineering org are folks with a mixture of both SaaS experience and experience out in like the real world or like operationally they did something. My experience is in supply chain. I have peers who have experience in finance, experience in consulting, just other experiences. And so it's my role to take our technology and take a customer's business problem and kind of merge the two. So I enable the customer on how to not only leverage Salonis to solve their problem, but to continuously leverage it to improve any given business process. So we are there in both a pre-sales and post-sales capacity. So if somebody new were to come to Salonis and say, hey, I'm interested in seeing how this works, I would demo the software. I would give some examples on where I've seen this problem before and really try to get an understanding of what they're looking to solve. And then I would make suggestions on like what solution should we apply. And then if they were to sign up and say, yep, I'd like to be a Salonis customer, please, I would be with them in the post-sales capacity as well. So enabling their teams, teaching them how to scale it, and just generally like collecting the value. That's the name value engineer.
Right. I love it. You probably get to see so many different industries this way too, and different companies, different cultures.
And that's why I love it, right? Because you get a little exposure to everything. So it also gives you an opportunity to kind of cross-pollinate a little bit, especially when you're a little bit hybrid with supply chain being a specialty. I mean, supply chain is similar at retail and CPG companies, but it can look very different in manufacturing,
Mm,
production, pharma, healthcare. And so being able to pick and choose and borrow like solutions that we've created in those industries and apply them in something like a retail, a CPG is very interesting.
that is.
So MK,
I like
you kind of talked about it, but so you've had TJX, Perch, now Salonis. What drove you to make those shifts? Because those are very different in terms of your career experiences, work experience, and like the value you're bringing to that organization. So can you talk about how you decided to make those changes?
I had never heard of that. I hadn't ever thought about a career in sales. It just was never on my radar. But I did know that I love talking to people, and that was really what I was missing during my time at Perch. It was like really great to learn a lot of the actual operational day-to-day things. And while I was talking to people, it was more of like a, hey, can you pick my container up and please don't charge me $20,000 to do it? Capacity than than more like a strategy, like, hey, here's this really big overarching complex problem, what would you do to solve it? And so when I first started looking into even making a transition into SaaS and solution engineering, I mean, I hadn't I didn't know what types of technology were out there, and tech sales was, again, like not on my radar at all. So having, after I decided, yes, that seems pretty interesting. Let me find a tech company that might appeal to
All
me.
right.
Finding Solaris, it was like a match made in heaven because it's more than just a technology company. You do need the foundation and background of like working in industry to be able to apply the technology correctly and really, really genuinely help the customers get value from it. It was like, okay, this, I have to work there. Like, this is so cool. And I think I studied harder for the interview than I did for some of my capstone classes. But no
We
one,
do. We do.
You're like, it's
but
not,
the
by the
reality,
way.
you never say that, right? You never say that. Let them believe their unicorn dream. But I think talking to people, you just talk to them and you try to break down their really complex, big, complicated problem into very simple pieces. And then you don't try to address the whole thing all at once with one solution. You crawl, walk, run. Okay, I have no inventory at the store. I don't know where it is. Why is that happening? Okay, well, how's your transportation department? Inventory is not a process, and that's a hill I will die on. Inventory is just going to be like the symptom of all of the problems, right? Whether it's in procurement, I don't have enough stuff, or whether it's in fulfillment, I have too much stuff, it's not where it should be. Either way, it's not an inventory problem. The origin is in some of the peripheral process areas, right? So going either further upstream to address those problems or downstream, I've had customers be like, why are you asking me about logistics? We are talking about inventory. And I'm like, no, there's a point, I promise. I'm just trying to get to the root. But breaking it down into the simplest pieces of the biggest complex problem often allows you to find not only the best solution, but the most efficient solution because you're looking at it from the simplest point of view.
I also appreciate too the way you're almost diagnosing this. Like the inventory is actually it's just a symptom. Like you think that that's the problem. But we all know supply chains are like complex and there's all kinds of different things that could be happening. And so it could be manufacturing, it could be logistics, it could be your forecast, right? And so looking at that as like, okay, this is a symptom and it's telling me something. So I need to go dig deeper to find out what's actually causing this. I love that.
And you'd be surprised at how many times people come forward and say, like, can you solve something like this communal inbox for me? Like, this inbox is my biggest issue. I don't have enough time in the day and enough people to throw at answering all the questions that come into my inbox. And then I sit there, I hear them, and I'm like, well, the inbox isn't actually your problem. It's like, what is driving people to need to reach out to you in the first place? Like, can we discuss that a little bit? Overcome the result of addressing the root cause is that the inbox no longer matters. Like, you shouldn't have anything in there at the end if we do our jobs right.
MK, you're so practical and logical. People are like, no, it is the inbox.
I need more people to read the inbox.
So,
Yeah.
MK, you have a strong foundation in data and analytics. And can you talk about how important that foundation is in data literacy for supply chain professionals? And how can those that are not maybe in a field or in a place where it's easy to get that, how can you go pursue that knowledge? Because what I hear from you is you say a lot of yes to a lot of things, which I think has been wonderful for you. And you have so much courage and lack of fear in those. But how can others that are like, I've been in this for a long time, I'm not versed in that, and how important do you think that is around the foundation of data?
So I don't know if this will be a hot taker or not, but I think, well, first of all, I have never had formal training in something like SQL or Excel. I have been naturally good at some of those things, but I've learned it largely on my own. So if I can learn it, anyone can learn it. That's like part one. But part two, I would say like what's more important than actual data analytics is understanding how the different systems connect to each other. So if I'm describing a problem in transportation, I know that I probably need to look at my TMS and also my ERP and perhaps also the system I'm using for reporting to see where the issue could be if it's like the systems aren't speaking the same language, if there's a delay between the TMS sending information to my reporting system and then also that information doesn't match what's in my ERP. Like oftentimes a lot of the problems that we find and diagnose with Celonis is that the systems don't speak the same language in addition to the fact that the people who are responsible for each respective role and department, they don't speak the same language either. So understanding like what is at the core of what you're looking at and using for analytics, I would say is more important than being technically enabled on all of those systems. Because if you can understand enough about where the report comes from and how it's structured to push back on the results and the answers, then you understand enough to make meaningful change.
We talk about a lot some of the challenges being in supply chain and then, speaking the same language of our business partners. But I do think there, as you said, an opportunity within supply chain to make sure we are understanding the same language, the same metrics, and like a one version of the truth. So that's a good reminder because I think we're always looking outside of us to say, where are the barriers outside of supply chain? But we probably have some of that, especially when it comes to data connectivity as well.
Mm-hmm. What about, MK, when you are working with clients and maybe I don't know, you need to translate really complex or maybe very technical solutions into like really tangible benefits? How do you, one, I think you've talked a little bit about how to understand a problem. So asking questions, looking at the root cause, and then once you come up with like the idea or how you want to get after it, because I think about like you're working at a tech company, right? How do you translate that those highly technical solutions so that everybody can understand them and they have like real tangible results are going to come from these solutions?
So I would say that the biggest thing is knowing your audience and understanding. If you understand what you're proposing technically and you understand the problem that you're trying to solve, you should be able to translate that into a language that anyone can understand, whether that's like an IT data analyst or whether that's like a chief supply chain officer or somebody in the C-suite. That's part one. And then part two is knowing when you need to ask for assistance in explaining it to somebody in those various departments. I personally have a lot of experience in supply chain, but I am not a financial expert. So if I am presenting to like a CFO, I will always bring one of my finance partners into the room with me and say, hey, just to make sure I am understanding this correctly, can you also explain it so that we can validate that, yes, I do have the right answer and I'm explaining it in a way that should make sense. So knowing when to ask for help and assistance in creating that explanation, I would say does a lot to your credibility. And then I think finally making sure that you have the right solution by checking with not just that person, but a broader set of individuals, because I think oftentimes decisions in general are made by one or two people. And that decision isn't always the right decision. So, making it kind of a group think, but also knowing when to say, hey, like I really strongly feel that opportunity A and B are better and going to solve your problem in the long term. So I guess being able to push back, but in a respectful way, using data and examples to say, hey, I've seen this work. I know it doesn't feel like it should work, but I promise it does. And here's some other people you can talk to.
MK, do you feel that at a smaller company that stakeholder management, is it easier, just being a little bit leaner, or do you see some of the same dynamics you would have seen at like a larger like TJX?
You would think the answer would be yes, but I would say it really depends. It's all about ownership and somebody's willingness to listen to recommendations that are like Salonis is great and we could solve a lot of your problems, but we can only make so many recommendations because at the end of the day, half the challenge with value realization is the willingness to actually make a change. You can only do so much with software. You need to be able to change the process at its core, which involves people and changing what they do on a day-to-day basis. So it depends on the person's willingness to change and then own the outcomes of that change. So smaller company can be equally as complex as a really large company if that individual we're working with doesn't want to own the change management.
MK, can you talk about, you mentioned process, and so can you talk about what is process mining and how do you see that revolutionizing supply chain management, especially in retail and CPG?
So at the beginning of this interview, I was like, no, I saw Salonis and I knew I had to work there. And this is kind of why. So at Perch, we were developing a lot of these things by hand and taking processes from, say, a $100 million acquisition versus a $4 million acquisition. And we were saying, okay, these two supply chains are very different, but let's operate them the same. How can we figure out how to integrate them? And so starting from like the procurement process, the sourcing process at both ends of that spectrum and figuring out how to merge it, but do it by hand, it was very interesting to find a technology that plugs in to underlying systems. So this is what process mining in Celonis is at its core. It plugs into underlying systems and uses transactional data to visually reconstruct what is actually happening within those transactional systems. So at Perch, it was like, okay, I would schedule a shipment. I knew I needed it picked up at the first of the month. I was also told how much it would cost. So I could put that in my little ERP and I could say, okay, this shipment should be $10,000. Here's who told me, here's the date they said they'd pick it up, etc. Then I'd go to my 3PL and I would say, hey, can you pick this up? They would say, yes, we will be there on X date. I agree, it will cost Y dollars. And that should have been all set. And then 6 months later, I'd find out there was an additional $10,000 in fees attached to that $10,000 shipment. And I would have no idea what happened in between. But with Celonis, I can look into the process and see, oh, my 3PL changed my pickup date 4 times. Also, there was demurrage because I put the wrong HTS code on the import paperwork. And so they pulled my container and searched it. My fault. Oops. And then also I ran out of free days because I forgot to schedule somebody to pick it up at the port. That's why it took way longer and cost twice as much. Okay.
Just those things.
You're like, I understand the extra 10,000 now.
My fault. So finding a technology that could show me what that looked like, I was like, this would have solved all of my problems because I would have known what was happening as it was happening instead of having to figure it out by piecemealing it back together, looking through emails, Excel spreadsheets, our ERP, and just kind of having to have that intrinsic knowledge of, hey, I scheduled this shipment, so I am personally the only one who can walk back and figure out exactly where things started to go wrong so that next time when I'm scheduling the shipment, I know to keep a better eye on it.
I love that example because I think it also helps bring to life, like you hear about things like process mining, but this is such a good example of like, no, here's how it adds value and quickly you can gain some efficiencies for your supply chain. As you think about technology in supply chain, MK, are there any other like emerging technologies out there that you see that you think are going to have a differential impact on supply chain?
Yeah, so I feel like this is going to sound like I'm reading a Chat GPT answer or I just check the news, but it really is true. I would say like the AI decision-making technologies out there or layering that in on top of something like a traditional process mining is going to start to have a huge impact. And we've started to do a little bit of that today at Celonis, looking at real-time weather reports, looking at real-time scheduling and being able to send an agent out to reschedule an appointment at a dock and keeping a human out of the loop. Just generally the more repetitive tasks that take up a lot of time but don't necessarily take up a lot of skill, having those AI agents do those instead of people and giving people the time back to focus on things that are more strategic. In addition to that, I would say digital twins, understanding how to scenario plan and see like, oh, what would a 2-week delay in China cause? What if I delay my buying cycle because of potential tariffs? Or how bad are tariffs actually going to be? And be able to simulate that without it having to play out in real time, and then use those outcomes to make decisions. I think both of those things are going to be really huge in the next couple of years.
Yeah, digital twin is one. Katie, don't you feel like we used to talk about it a lot? Now I don't hear as much about people leveraging it, and I don't know why.
You
But
don't.
yeah,
It's because AI is
yeah,
shiny and
that's true.
exciting and people want to apply that a lot. But I think AI is also going to lead to, I know digital twin taking a step back, that sounds and feels weird, but I think AI is going to lead to a lot more of that behavior because AI is going to lead to like your autonomous organization in the end. So you need something that you can play around with and test before actually putting it into place because, people have done these jobs for decades and decades. You don't want to just take the leap of faith and assume the AI agent or model is going to operate exactly like a human being. just if there's intended and unintended
Yeah.
consequences of
Mm.
that.
I
I
liked how
think
you said though I like you're gonna be seeing it, I think, layered on
Mm-hmm.
things now. Like you said, like, hey, you're trying to layer it on process mining. I think it'll get layered on the digital twins. Um, yeah, I agree. I know it's everywhere, but I do think it's gonna be an accelerator. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit. So one of the questions we always like to ask, I know we didn't send it ahead, so it's a surprise. We like, so it's called Hero Hardship Highlight. I just want to ask. I think you're gonna have such an interesting answer. I just do. So hero, who's someone that it's inspired you or that you look up to through your personal professional life? Chip, what's something tough thing you've been through? And then what's been the highlight that you would call out? So I'll give you some time to think because I know this is a new one. So I'm just like jumping out there.
let's see. As far as a hero goes, I would say that several come to mind. I don't know that I would say my mom is my hero because that would sound weird coming from me, but I would say so my mom is an electrical engineer at the start of her career. And then she actually rose through the ranks at NASA. So she was always in a very male dominated industry. And growing up, she like never mentioned that at all as like
Yeah.
a hardship or something that was
Yeah.
difficult to deal with. Like I never until I got into the working world and like very much
Mm,
in the trenches of being a female in a male dominated industry, like it was like that was a non-factor for
Mm.
her. So I think that's been like pretty inspiring to like not necessarily even think about that being a limiting factor in not only myself personally and professionally, but like as far as my career goes. And I also think it led to like not being intimidated by taking on a lot of these new opportunities as well, because I mean, it just was never a thing.
I think
So
that's an amazing hero.
not
I'm like, oh, she sounds like a hero to me. You're like
that's such a good
electrical engineer that
story.
did work
Yeah.
with NASA. Like, yep, that's a hero. Shero. She is.
I mean, you started in like the
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
And so like totally male dominated. She was the only woman in the room most of the time. And it's like, wow, I didn't know that I should notice that ever.
Yeah.
So I just think that's so interesting, especially now wanting to be a good female role model for a lot of the other people in supply chain. I think that, yeah, we should talk about that. We should address that. But the fact that she didn't, I mean, almost like
Yeah.
adds a layer of like, wow,
Yeah.
that's really,
She
I
just did
love
it.
that.
yeah, she just did it.
I love it. So this is why you grew up in Huntsville, then,
Okay.
Alabama.
I know.
Okay.
I'm
All
connecting
right.
all the dots now. Okay.
Yeah, I
Hardship.
know.
So a hardship. So uh, I am actually widowed. Long story short, actually 5 years ago today.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
so, dropping out of college with a year to go, having been diagnosed with a very rare cancer, that was really hard. And then I do know at the beginning of this, I was like, oh, you move up where the job is. But the reality is that we moved here for Dana-Farber, which is one of like
Mm,
the premier cancer
Yeah.
yep.
centers in the United States. So, kind of navigating all of that like I was 20
Wow.
years old when that first started, and then I moved up here at 22, 23, and like not knowing anyone, needing to find that job, and then figuring out how to balance all of that with, um, being 23 and trying to grow up. That was very difficult.
Yeah.
But I also think it made me I am a yes girl. Like I'm going to try everything and I'm going to fail at everything. It's really made me appreciate all of that a lot more. I would say that was pretty hard, but now that I'm out on the other side, there were a lot of lessons learned, and I think a lot of appreciation for not, I don't want to say a do-over because I think I learned who I was too
Hmm.
of that. But a lot of appreciation for being able to really focus on what do I want out of life, what do I want out of my career, and like just the growth that you can get from kind of the ashes of a situation.
Yeah. It crystallizes things.
Thank you for
Yeah, for
sharing that
sure.
with
Yeah.
us.
I mean, there was a time there where it was like literally did not care about anything because I was like, I know how
Mm.
bad this can get. It could not be worse. So sure, let me just do all these new things, try all these new things. But yeah, so that would be a pretty significant hardship. Um,
Thank you for sharing. That's a
but yeah,
amazing story
of
and
course.
how you got here.
Seriously. It
Okay.
is.
Highlight.
Highlight, I would say probably our first baby. our first baby coming into the world this year, and kind of navigating what it's going to be like to be a working mom at the end. Um, Again, coming from, real low, like, losing a potential husband and kind of growing from there. And then now I have this whole new life where I've done all these things. I've learned all these things about not only myself personally and professionally, but now we've created this marriage and this life, and now we've really created a life, right? So I think navigating motherhood is going to be the next big challenge over the next couple of years. So really looking forward to doing that, and then hopefully she grows up and decides she wants to do something similar.
Love
Thank
that.
you so much. I'm glad I switched gears to our three H's because we always learn something new about somebody. But it
Mhm.
has been so great talking to you, MK, and meeting you and hearing your story. Katie, we were just like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. Just
Incredible. Yeah.